So we're going to open up on page. Is that page 158? Okay. You found it? Okay. 158. So this week what we're gonna focus on is basically the end of the prayers. Okay, we next week we'll talk about really like our last topic of like the normal part of the prayers, and then with the few weeks that we have left, we'll dive into other minor parts of the tefillah that we don't give as much attention to. So Aleinu l'shabach. Aleinu l'shabach is a 158. So it's a prayer that it finishes our services. Okay, we say it in all of our services, and it's a closing prayer that's very, very important, and people kind of say it on their way out of services, right? Which is a shame because of its importance. Okay, and similar to what we talked about last week with Uvalat Zion, that there's a value in bringing it out into our personal life. So Rav Beck, a rabbi from the yeshiva in Gush Etzion, also has this kind of approach with Aleinu, that the goal of Aleinu, the reason it's at the end of services, is so that we learn it and take it out with us outside of services into our day-to-day, into the rest of our day of just our regular part of our day. Bring a little bit of that learning in. So Aleinu l'shabach is written in the earliest form of it that we know of is around the 12th century, okay, in the first machzorim for the high holidays. Okay, that is the first time that it's mentioned, and later on it is added in to the Siddur as part of our everyday prayers, and we're familiar with it in two separate parts. There are some people who attribute it back to Yehoshua when he's going into the land of Israel and to conquering of the land. Aleinu l'shabach, it's our duty to praise, le'adon hakol, to the master of all, latet gedula liyotzer bereshit, to give to ascribe greatness to the creator, to the master of the universe. Shelo asanu kigoyei ha'aratzot, that he did not make us like the nations of the land. V'lo samanu k'shpachot adama, and didn't make us like the families of the land. Shelo sam chelkenu kahem v'goralenu k'chol ha'olam, that he did not give, that he didn't put our part with them, that he didn't put us with them and put us separately. Shehem mishtachavim lehevel varik umitpalelim el Elo Yoshia. Now you see that part is in parentheses. Shehem mishtachavim, for they bow to vanity and emptiness and pray to a God which helps not. This is possibly the most important part of Aleinu, right? As a major part of Aleinu, and you'll see it's divided into two parts that are very, very different from each other. But this part of Shehem Mishtachavim, that they bow down to nothing, right, is in essence what Aleinu is. The first part of Aleinu talks about the fact that we are different. It's like Havdalah, right? Just like how when we finish Shabbat, we say Hamavdil ben Kodesh L'chol, the one who separates between the mundane and the holy, Ben Or Lechoshev, between light and darkness, Ben Israel La'amim, between the nation of Israel and the rest of the world, right? There is something spiritual and special about us, and this is Havdalah, saying we're doing something different. So why is this in parentheses? This starts about about the year 1330 in Spain. There's a Jew who converts to Christianity. And after he converts to Christianity, he goes and he tells the king He tells him this prayer specifically is an attack on Christianity. Okay? How is this attack on Christianity? Well, the word varik that we just read, which means emptiness, okay, is the same numerical value as Yeshu, as Jesus. And therefore, when we are referring to this in our prayer, what are we referring to? We are referring to Christians who are bowing down to nothing. And it is an attack on Christianity. Immediately, he banned this prayer completely. Okay? Later on, the prayer was allowed to return, okay, but not in its full form. And this was this specific passage of Shehem Mishtachavim Lehevel Barik. A lot of communities were not allowed to put it in. Some of it had to do with censorship. So 1500s, early 1500s, you have the printing press, and the printing press was Christians, right? And they knew very well what it said over there because they were being told, and they decided not to print that. They censored a lot of things inside Judaism because they owned the printing press. So while they're censoring it out, you can see in some very old Sidurim that there was, when they were writing it, they left a blank line over there on purpose so that when you got your Sidur, you would fill this in by hand, okay? But then the governments weren't very happy about this because it was still an affront on Christianity. So they weren't letting it happen at all. And there was an old custom that started to spit in that part when when we were supposed to say it, because we couldn't say it because it wasn't in the Siddur. So there's a custom, it's not very common anymore. Chabad still does this in some places. But basically when you get to Aleinu, you say, Kichol hamonam, and then you spit on the floor, okay? And they would cover it up. You put your foot on and just cover it. In older synagogues, you find actually signs that say, please don't spit or snort onto the ground, use the spittoon. And it was a bowl, my great uncle has one, okay? It's a bowl that is for spitting for Aleinu, okay? So there was this custom that started for this purpose. Why for this purpose? Two things of the word varik. First reason for the word varik, we said it's the numerical value of Yeshu. So it was a way of, either originally that was the purpose, okay, when whoever was compiling it used this pasuk. But if you look at this passage, where does it come from? It comes from Isaiah, right? This predates Christianity by a lot, right? And this has nothing to do with them. But once you're going to attribute something, we're going to ride that roller coaster until the end, right? So they decided that it was talking about them and wouldn't let us print it. So people made a custom out of it to spit in as sort of saying, like, we're spitting on him, okay? That's the first one. Second one is varik, or rik, has the same letters as rok, which means spit, okay? So it sort of became this custom. That custom mostly died out, okay? That's the first one. The second one came later on by the Arugot Habosem, who Estelle is direct descendant of. This is her yichus, her lineage. She always says she's a descendant of the Arugot Habosem, and he says Lahevel Varik is the gematria, it's the numerical value of Muhammad and Yeshu. He says we got two religions at once. So once that happened, the Muslims didn't let us print it either, right? So we keep on, we have a record of screwing ourselves by saying these things. But this basically ended up being that we weren't allowed to print this for a very, very, very long time. 1700s, it starts, Aleinu is completely popularized. It's in all the Sidurim, but without this pasuk. And it became another custom, right? We say Aleinu out loud. Where did that custom come from that we say Aleinu out loud? Was the government used to send police officers into the synagogue to make sure that we are not saying this, that we didn't memorize it and we're not saying it as part of our prayers, because they were printing and then they saw that we were writing it in, so they started sending police officers to make sure that we were staying in line, right? And because they weren't sure if we were saying it or not, they made everybody say Aleinu out loud. So that custom still is lived out till this day. Okay, yeah.
What authority did other people apart from Jews have in the Jewish setting?
Christians weren't big fans of Jews up until recently. So persecution was a very, very big part of our history, right? And with the persecution, there's abuse, and you get to decide what you do and what you don't do, right? Like, think of Kenya and say, what right did the British have to tell Kenyans what to do and what not to do, right? It's in your own life. The answer is whatever they wanted to, they were ruling over here, and you become subjects, right? So if you look throughout Jewish history, we're all over Europe, right? Let's go around the Aleinu period of time, right? So from the 12th century until now, right, until recently, we're in Europe, and we are being told what we can do and what we can't do. Printing presses made a big decision in these things. By the way, even in like regular Torah studies, Bible studies, the Christians were in charge of the printing press. They decided where the chapter started and where the chapter ended, right? If you look at Bereshit, at Genesis, right, the first chapter, where does it end in the Christian count? It ends after Friday. And then chapter 2 starts with Shabbat, as opposed to in the Jewish count, where it ends after Shabbat, because the days of creation, it's 7 days of creation, and not 6 days and then God needs to rest. It's 7 days, and on the seventh day, God creates rest. There's an agenda in how you print things, right? So like how you print things, where you put commas, where you put those things, right? Like full stops, those things make a difference in how you're going to read things. So with the Siddur, they said, this is offensive. You are attacking us. You are our subjects, right? We're not willing to have this happen. So they took it out completely. And then in certain communities, so again, this starts in Spain, but it spreads all over Europe, right? So in different places, in Bulgaria, it was where the custom started that you need to say out loud because the government didn't trust us to keep quiet, right? To not say it. So they would make you say it standing up, right? Like saying it out loud so they can hear that you're not saying this. Okay? Yes?
Why did the other religions have interest, such great interest with Judaism that they had to send spies? What was all this all about?
Control.
Jews never went to Christianity or Muslim to do what?
Correct. So it's a matter of control, right? If you
control Jews?
Yes.
Did they want to control Islam?
Yes.
Muslims
So when Christians ruled over Muslims, they controlled how Muslims practice, and when Muslims ruled over Christians, they controlled how Christians practice. There's something about the mentality of colonization. We're familiar with colonization only in like the recent years in the mindset, right? But the saying in Kikuyu of there's no difference between a missionary and a colonizer, they both have guns. Okay, the missionaries used the colonizers because they wanted to spread Christianity around Africa, right? But the colonizers used the missionaries because the quicker you can change the way people think, okay, the easier it is to take control of a place, right? If I can control what you believe, I can control anything, right? This is the power of religion. So when you have subjects that are praying against you, okay, and are back talking you all the time, then you're gonna have problems, right? So what do? They say you can't say this. This is offensive. You can't use this prayer. You can't use that word. Okay. There's a lot of things that they removed because they felt like it was talking about them specifically.
Again, I'm coming to think about it was written in Hebrew or Yiddish. How did these people move?
There were those who converted to Christianity, right? Whenever we have this throughout history, especially with Christians, that Jews that converted to Christianity are very, very problematic because they go around and they do what, like they first they have a mindset, a Jewish mindset, right? And they say, here is what the Jews really think about you. Okay, the biggest example that comes to mind is the disputation in Barcelona, okay, between Nachmanides and Pablo Cristiani. This is early 1400s, mid 1400s, where basically there's a dispute whether Yeshua is the Messiah or not, right? And the church doesn't have anyone of their own that is powerful enough to stand up against Nachmanides. He's a brilliant rabbi. So who do they bring? His name was Pablo Cristiani, who used to be a Jew who converted to Christianity, and he was a learned man, not as learned as Nachmanides, but he knows his text and he knows their text, right? And then he says, here is the proof, right? These are all the proofs of Isaiah and all of these things. Where does that come from? It comes from learned Jews who take things out of context, right? And then you are basically, I can force you to say something that will sound really, really bad and get you in trouble, right? So he goes through all of these types of discussions, and Nachmanides ends up winning because he is superior to him. And the king tells him, he says, because you won, you need to escape tonight, because the church will come after you tomorrow, right? Like it also shows you like the king no longer has the power to fight off the church. The church became so powerful. So he escapes and he goes to Israel, right? And there's a lot of the story of Nachmanides in Israel, including Igeret HaRamban that he writes to his son, which is the famous one of Shema beni musar avicha, right? Remember how to behave and always be patient and treat people well, right? This is his like will and testimony to his son, right? But the point is that you have throughout history, you have Jews who are traitors, right? They switch religions and then they use whatever knowledge they have to fight against Judaism, okay, for whatever purpose. So, huh?
Is that Jews have ashamed the one to come, these traitors?
It's very, it is, yeah.
Conversion to Christianity would be blasphemous.
It is blasphemous. It is blasphemous, and it's worse to then use that to force other Jews to convert, right? But think from like an egocentrical, selfish kind of place, right? You are having a hard time on a personal level in Greece and Rome, wherever it is, right? And the government tells you, I will take you out of poverty. I will take you out of whatever slums you are, and I will give you a nice house. I'll give you status. I'll give you a salary. Okay, go convert, right? And people converted. These are the people that we have the biggest problems with, right? We fight them, right? Because they're not converting out of fear. They're converting for luxury, right? Then later on, you have the Marranos and other groups that converted because it was convert or die, right? And in Judaism, the answer is die, right? Like you don't change religion. Okay, this is one of the things that you die for, right? And there were groups that converted and kept their Judaism secret, right? Because they didn't really want to convert, but they also didn't want to die. And there's a lot of discussions about them, and was that the right thing to do or not? They were known as the Marranos, right? So whenever you have people who have knowledge, right? If I can take you and say, okay, now I can flip you and use you to my advantage, that's really important. Why is the argument between Nachmanides and Pablo Cristiani so important? And also there was a disputation in France, which happened with one of the great rabbis over there in the 1400s. That happened, it was him versus another conversation, right? Like these things happened, okay? Because if you can convince the great rabbi to convert to Christianity, right, everybody follows, right? So you always go after the leaders, right? Always go after the leaders. This will help everybody else follow quicker, right? So in the story of Hanukkah, right, they're going after the high priest. They say, if we can get him to bring an offering of a pig on the altar, then everyone will convert, right? We don't need to kill everyone. We don't need to chase everyone. All we need to do is get one person and everybody will follow him. Nachmanides was that person. So it's like 1240 something, the disputation in Barcelona, right? But this guy, who the conversee, his name is Pesach Peter, and he says like he was going to show that Jews have like this like anti against Christianity, that we like hide it in our prayers, right? But other rabbis wrote after this and wrote it very clearly. They said this is in Isaiah years beforehand. This has nothing to do, right? We have this prayer. Okay, we have this prayer as the end of our services. Okay? So when we got here, that was one of the first things that we changed, because I find that very important, right? Huh? Most synagogues outside of Israel used to skip it. Okay, it started coming back. Like if you look at the art scroll that we're using now, right? The first edition of art scroll is 1969, and that's when they started printing it outside of Israel. That's the first siddur that I know that prints it. The British one of Singer didn't print it ever, didn't continue printing it. And then the big one that was printing without parentheses and showing it straight out was Rinat Israel in Israel, right? Like they just said, like we're not concerned of what the Christians think of us or what the Muslims think of us, and we're putting it back, right? And I think that there's value in it. I also think that it's not a terrible thing to have the prayer still out loud, because people will say it more, and it's an important prayer. But there are people who have taken who say it silently, because it is a Christian forcing thing to make us say it out loud. Okay, ve'anachnu korim, after we finish that they are bowing down to nothing and emptiness. Okay, then we say, and we are bowing down. Korim u'mishtachavim u'modim. We are bowing down and we are thanking Lifnei Melech Malchem Melechim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So we bow down at this point, okay, to God, who's King of Kings, Shehu Noteh Shamayim v'Yosed Aretz U'Moshav Yikaro B'Shamayim Al U'Shchinat Uzo B'Govei Meromim. That He is the one who plants the sky and settles the land, and He sits up in the heavens, and He is our God, Hu Eloheinu en od. There is no one else. Emet Malkeinu. It is true. Our King is true. Efes Ulato. There is no one else with Him, no other. Kakatuv b'Torato, as it says in His Torah, V'yadata hayom, that you should know today, V'hashivotai levavecha, and return it to your heart. Ki Adonai hu Elohim b'shamayim al v'ala aretz mitachat en od. That Hashem is the God in the sky above, and on the land beneath there is no other. This is the first part of Aleinu. The second part is possibly written by someone else. Okay, there isn't enough. I haven't heard anything convincing about who wrote the different parts, but it's clearly already, we said, in the 12th century, like it's already found over there, and it's al ken nekavelecha. And because of this, because of all the things that we said, so what did we say? We acknowledge that there's one God, right? He's the only one, and everybody else are false gods. Anyone else who's trying is a false god. Yeah. Al ken nekavelecha, and therefore we put our hopes in you. Hashem Elokeinu lirot me'era b'tiferet uzecha. That we are putting our hopes in you, that we will soon see your mighty splendor. Lehavir gilulim min haaretz. So that's a bit of a strange word. Lehavir, to pass gilulim. Gilulim is in modern Hebrew is very similar to the word glalim, which means feces. Okay, and it's referring to idols. Okay, so to remove the idols from the land, and the idols should be all destroyed and removed. Litaken olam b'malchut Shaddai, to fix the world in God's kingdom. V'chol b'nei basar, and all those who are alive, right? Anyone who is made of meat. Yikre'u b'shimcha, will call in your name. La'afnot elecha kol rishei haaretz, they will call in your name to make everybody turn to you. All of those make everybody turn to you. Kol rishei aretz, all of the evil people in the world. Yakiru v'yid'u kol yeshvei tevel. Everybody should know, all of those who are living in this world, ki lecha tichra kol berech tishava kol lashon, that every knee shall bend to you, and every tongue shall swear to you. Lefanecha Adonai Eloheinu yikru v'yiplu lechavod shimcha yikaritenu. Before you, God, they will fall, and they will give, and in the honor of your name, they will give that is precious. V'kablu kulam et ol malchutecha v'timloch aleim me'era le'olam va'ed, and they will accept all of them your yoke of your kingship, and you shall rule them soon forever. Ki hamalchut shelcha hi ule'olmei ad timloch bekavod kakatuv betoratecha, because the kingship is yours forever, and you shall rule it with your glory. Kakatuv betoratecha, like it says in your Torah, Adonai imloch le'olam va'ed. Hashem shall rule forever and ever. V'ne'emar v'haya Adonai lemelech al kol haaretz bayom hahu yeh Adonai echad u'shmo echad. And in that day, Hashem will be king on the whole land. That day, His name will be one, and He will be one, and His name will be one. Okay. So this we actually talked about already on Shabbat, but I will repeat for anyone who is not there and anyone who's going to be watching it later, that part of an understanding of what the days of Mashiach are, okay, is if you're looking over here. It's, in the end of Isaiah, right? It's in the end of Isaiah, it says over here, in that day, what's that day? In this miraculous day, when everything becomes better. What does that mean when things become better? What will happen? God's name will be known. God's name will be one, right? And everybody knows that. As soon as there's an epiphany to the world, that everybody knows God is one, that is the new world, right? That is the fixed world, right? So we said over here, what are we trying to do? Because of all of these things that we're acknowledging, that there is one God, no one else, right? Then, because of that, here is what we're praying for. Because of that, everyone shall know your name, okay? Because we are acknowledging one, right? Then we should fix the world in your image. And because we're fixing the world in your image, then every knee shall bow to you, every tongue shall swear to you. And in that day, when the whole world knows that Hashem is one and His name is one, then everything is perfect. Everything is fixed. Okay? So this is very much like where I stand as far as what it means to have a fixed world, is this one pasuk, the end of Aleinu. Okay? Hashem echad u'shmo echad. Everyone will know that God is one and His name is one. Okay, that sums up the end of days. Okay, because once you have that, right? Once you have the fact that there's an acknowledgement of there's one God and His name is one, then God knows all, has been around for everything, has said things and has not changed His mind. Right? So if God knows all and hasn't changed His mind and promised that He will never leave us as His nation, then Christianity has no leg to stand on in the matter of saying God left us and has chosen them. Right? So when the world knows that there is one God and really one God, that changes Christianity's view. Okay? When Islam looks around and says there is one God, and He has not changed His mind, and He has not continued and gone on to other religions, right? Not to Christianity, not to Islam. There is no continuation afterwards in that kind of sense. Then what ends up happening, if you're acknowledging that the only divine word in this world is the Torah, not the New Testament, not the Quran, right? But actual divinity is the Torah, then it says in the Torah that Abraham has one son from his wife Sarah, and that Ishmael is a son of a concubine and gets cast out, right? And the end of why is this so important is because only one of the children can inherit Abraham's real inheritance, which is the land of Israel. The second that the world is known that there is one God, his name is one, actual truth is revealed to the world, right? This is a very big part of what I believe in. I believe that in this world, a big part of why we're here is the pursuit of truth, trying to figure out what the truth is. When that truth is revealed to us in its complete form for everyone, then where's their conflicts? Idol worshippers know they're not right. Okay, then what? Christians understand where they went wrong. Muslims understand where they went wrong, right? So everybody comes and asks the Jews and says, what are we supposed to do, right? This is v'naharu elecha amim rabim, okay? And the nations will come to you because they will ask. They'll say, now that we know that God is one, now that we know the truth, what are we supposed to do, right? And we're in a very interesting time in history, okay, where the world is, right, like we've seen this since the beginning of the state of Israel. The world's eyes are always on Israel, okay? We're a tiny country that most of the world can't find on a map, right? But somehow everybody has an opinion about Israel. Haven't met a single person, doesn't matter where you are in the world, doesn't have an opinion about Israel, right? Why? Because we're supposed to be doing something, right? And they're looking at us. They're looking at us for answers, for inspiration, and we need to start behaving as such, okay? As people who should be providing those answers and inspirations, right? And why is that happening? A lot of it has to do, thanks to Christianity and Islam, spreading the fact that God is one around the world, right? In a proper form or a less proper form that they've been doing, right? But there is a understanding of now the world is hearing that there's one God and knows that there's one God. Now it's our job. Now it's our time, right? And this is when things start to change. Now, Aleinu, we say it after every single service, right? In the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening. There's two other times throughout the year, not Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, okay? Two other times throughout the year that we say it as part of a ceremony, okay, that is not necessarily part of services. Anything comes to mind? When do we say Aleinu as a separate part? So the first one is we say in Kiddush Levana. Kiddush Levana is the blessing of the new month, okay, when you see the first moon, okay, after services, we finish the services, we go outside, and we have a special prayer that is the first commandment that we are given as a nation. It's when you see the new moon, okay, you basically sanctify the new moon and say it is a new month, okay? This is something that starts in right after, like while we're still enslaved, okay? This is before we're even freed, okay? And it's a special blessing. And we say this prayer, and then we dance around, right? And we finish and we say Aleinu. That's the first one. The second one is, we just did it now, at a brit, at a circumcision. At a circumcision, we finish the circumcision and we say Aleinu, okay? And both of them are for the same reason. These are things that from an outside point of view would look like a pagan kind of behavior, okay? Also, who wrote? I don't see. Also for a siyum. Also in a siyum we say Aleinu. I don't remember that, but okay. The two that I'm familiar with are are at a brit, and in at a brit and in and at Kiddush Levana. And both of the reasons have to do with the fact that it looks like a pagan ritual, right? It looks like we're doing something that idol worshippers would do, right? We're outside and it looks like we're praying to the moon, right? We are circumcising our child in the name of God, right? These are things that look very un-Jewish. And because of that, okay, we stop and we say Aleinu. right? We say we are doing these specific prayers, okay, while we are because God commanded us to do so. We are doing these prayers, getting grumpy, okay? We are doing these prayers because we have a commandment to do so, and we are not doing it like the rest of the nations, okay? We are not doing it like the rest of the nations because we are different, okay? This is the first part, like what we said, it has to do with havdalah, difference between us and everybody else. So when I'm doing something, if it looks to you like something pagan, I'm going to make an example out of it and say, Aleinu, okay? My father-in-law told me, he says that they were once in a place and they were in they were doing Kiddush Levana outside of the synagogue, and he said he heard someone passing by and saying, last week they were at the water doing tashlich, right, like between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, right? They were praying to the river, and now they're praying to the moon, right? So maybe it would be right to put in other places like tashlich, where we go out and we're throwing our sins into the water, right? Or doing anything else that is outside in the public sphere where people see us doing things that maybe do not look like Jewish customs, right? And saying, Aleinu l'shabech, we are thanking God that we are not like the other nations, and that you've commanded us to do these things. I think the reason that we don't do it in Tashlich is Tashlich is a custom as opposed to a Brit Milah, okay, circumcision, and Kiddush Levana, which both are mitzvahs from the Torah. Okay, any questions about Aleinu?
I was thinking of the breaks. Why I think we don't notice it so much is because, at the same time we are doing the service. Like at the end of the service, you always say Aleinu.
Right, so we did Aleinu. So if we were doing, when you do a normal service, usually for a Brit, you're supposed to do it as early in the morning as possible, okay? The reason is what's called Zrizim Makdimim LaMitzvot, which means those who are quick wake up to do the mitzvahs early, right? So over here, we did it in the afternoon so that people can be here. And then there was a protest and people couldn't come, right? But you do it early so that people are there before work, and it's an honor for the baby that you're doing mitzvahs early for him, right? So the way you do it in regular services is you finish the service, you say Aleinu, then afterwards you do the Brit and you say Aleinu again, okay? Because it is a separate blessing. Okay? Anything else? No? Okay.